Si tú no quieres beber, tengo fila hasta 3. No te necesito más. Te crees muy solo, sé. Obvio que te digo, sé. Pero hay más en Instagram. Si tú no quieres beber, tengo fila hasta 3. No te necesito más. Te crees muy solo, sé. Obvio que te digo, sé. Pero hay más en Instagram. Te crees más de lo que eres, pero en el mundo lo que a mujeres me la creía hasta ese día que me engañaste. ¿Qué más?
Reciclaba amores y estabas tú.
Good. I was going to say good morning because I'm pre-recording this, but hello, everyone. This is the Meta Behind Relationships. And today we have an interesting topic. I'm going to be discussing the couple that prays together and why prayer is so important. I think this is one of the things that we just need to be more mindful of as we talk about spirituality and relationships, metaphysics and relationships, and how to apply these laws and principles of spirit and mind to our everyday lives. It's important that we have a practice. And if you're cohabitating with someone, whether it's marriage or long-term relationship, or you're living together, whatever your circumstance is or might be, I'm saying that I think it's necessary to have a prayer life. And today we're going to discuss what that means and what that looks like. As always, I have as a part of my discussions the CEO and founder of the 5S to Love, Christine Burkett. Hi, Christine.
Hey, Gaylon.
Hey there. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm really happy you're having this conversation. When I thought about this whole thing about the 5Fs to love, faith is one of the 5Fs, right? And so I think it's important that in order for you to continue that bond, you have to continuously work at it. And part of that is making sure that you're, I'm not going to say emotionally, but I don't know how to say faith on the same page. But that type of bond is so intense and so important. And I kind of think that that's like the infrastructure. You can kind of weather some things if you are connected on that level, because everything else just kind of grows on top of that. So I'm excited you're talking about this.
Good.
Especially since for me, moving into the realm of wanting to be in a relationship, I think it's important, even when you're single, understanding the importance, the variables, the elements that go into making a really strong relationship. Sometimes as singles, you don't think about these things. So I'm really excited. So the first thing I'm going to ask you, which maybe some people like, why is prayer important to couples?
Well, prayer is important to couples because I think it does a few things. Let's deal with the first one. I'm a big believer that prayer is a process through which you get inner guidance. I think prayer is a process through which you focus your mind. I think prayer is a process through which you build and develop your faith. So if you do that as an individual, what can that look like as a couple? I also think prayer is one of the ways in which you suppress your ego.
Mm.
and get in alignment with the higher spiritual divine will, or if that's not how people interpret their own spirituality, how to express these divine or spiritual attributes and qualities. So, when you want to get out of your way, one of the best ways to do that is to pray and get to the space to where you can say, not my will, your will be done. Because it's easy to get caught up in your own personality. It's easy to get caught up in your own, what I would say, idiosyncrasies. It's easy to
Mhm.
get caught up in your own habits. It's easy to get caught up in your own point of view. And as an individual and as a couple, it's good to be able to say, okay, let's get out of that energy and let's go higher. Let's get into a higher spiritual consciousness, a higher spiritual vibration. Let's get into alignment with ourselves so we can make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a position to where our egos are clashing and we lose sight of what's important in the relationship. Seek spiritual guidance, seek to be in alignment with what you're seeking to produce in your relationship. And I think it can go a long way.
You know, Galen, I love that you said that when you look back at relationships, a lot of times people do get caught up in what they want, what they need, what they desire, and they become this me, you against one another. But like you said, if you just kind of put that stuff to the side, and I'm very sure over the years, you've done a lot of marriage counseling, and I'm going to say, raise my hand on this. When you've been single, uh, dating people is different than long-term cohabitation and commitment to a person. That's totally different. When you date, you go to your separate, homes and different states or whatever, and you just kind of maintain your oasis, the me, everything,
Mhm.
right? But when you come together, you got to kind of shift that. And I mean, even down to people like things a certain way.
Right.
And I had this conversation with someone about an ottoman. It was an ottoman. It wasn't even that big. It was an ottoman. And the woman said, I really would love to have an ottoman in the living room. And he said, well, I don't plan on sitting in the living room. I didn't grow up where we sat in the living room. Why do you need an ottoman in the living room? And it became a big conversation. And it's so funny because I think the thing that would have really kind of brought it to closure would have been just sitting down and talking about it and then kind of praying on it. But instead of that, they separated the house. He decorated the main floor and she had the lower level all over an ottoman. So have
Mhm.
you seen that where people kind of, because they're not praying and working together on common goals and not being selfish, right? That
Mhm.
little things become major things.
Yeah, so I think anytime you have human personalities involved with a thing and the need to be right, not based upon any factual information, but just perception and context, you're going to bump into these type of issues. So of course, I've bumped into some issues around we did the house this way versus that. We left the Christmas tree up too long. Uh, you know, you know, all type of stuff, just all
Right.
type. And when you really get down to when you start asking questions, in my case is doing some type of couples counseling as a minister. Most of the time, when you start asking the questions about the relationship, in other
Yeah.
words, what really matters to you? Why did you fall in love with this person? Why did you want to be with this person? Why did you want to commit your life to being with this individual? The energy shifts,
Yeah.
but it when people are stuck in their position, they're not necessarily thinking about how this affects the totality of their relationship. Because if you can get people to the point of saying, okay, this is really not a bottom line issue for me. This is
Right.
preference. Now, how much of a level of preference does this make me uncomfortable? Am I willing to surrender this preference because it makes her or him happy? All right, that's a great question. And what I'm saying is, if a person is not used to a process that allows them to get past themselves
Mm-hmm.
and their own just inner low level human consciousness conversations that we all have in our heads, then it's very difficult at times to get to the space to where you can surrender a position for the well-being of the relationship or compromise a position for the well-being. You know, somebody really smart back about 2,000 years ago, they called him Jesus, said, why do you look to remove the speck from your brother's eye where there was a log in your eye? Hypocrite. That's what he
Mm-hmm.
said. Hypocrite. First remove the log out of your eye, and then you can be in a better position. I'm just adding a little translation to be able to remove the splint from your brother's eye. And I think that's a lot of times how people deal with relationships. It's easy to throw stones without realizing the stuff that you do.
Yes.
Okay, so if you don't have a process and through which you evaluate your own thinking, through which you surrender your own positions and points of view. I'm not saying that anybody should be a walking mat, but prayer allows you to be in a space to be able to say, okay, I got my ways, and I realize there's a higher way.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the difference.
I like that. There's a way, but I know that there's a higher way. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we get back, we're going to talk to Gaylon about what if you're with someone who doesn't make prayer a priority? How do you get them to understand that prayer should be a priority? Or maybe just, I don't know, how to start it. Folks, that's a major conversation because in relationships, sometimes, as Gaylon has said on previous podcasts, we get physically attached before we get mentally and emotionally attached. And then that's just an outfall of it because you've already attached yourself physically. Folks, we'll be right back after a quick commercial break so we can figure out how to get someone to pray with you if they're not a person who's big on prayer.
My name is Christine Burkett, the inventor of the 5 F's to Love. This is a compatibility app. It's an app that gives you an opportunity to rate words that start with the letter F in chronological order of importance to you, to help you find your one true love, your soulmate, and the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. So after you've taken the time to rate your F's in chronological order, you send a link to the person, I don't know, you just met, or the person you've been dating for quite some time, or maybe it's the person you've been married to for 30 to 40 to 50 years. And then you compare your top 5 F's to find out what things you have in common and things that you may perhaps need to work on. This is taking a simplistic perspective on how to find your one true love, your soulmate, the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And thank you for downloading the 5 F's app.
Hey guys, welcome back. And if you are just starting out with us tonight, we are actually talking about prayer and the impact on couples. The praying together is important. But hey, if you just started dating, download that app. Faith is one of them. You'll find out from the beginning whether faith is in their top 5. So we left out, Gaylon, we were talking about starting a conversation around what if you're with someone who doesn't think that prayer is a priority?
Well, obviously, you should know that before you cohabitate with someone. As you talk about with your 5S for Love app, you need to ask those questions before you get so invested, and then you decide that's a bottom line for you, and now it's a problem. Some people, are very private. They don't want to pray with people, around people. Some people are spiritual. They just, they have more of a reclusive mentality when it comes to their spirituality. Some people, it's not a priority, but they're good people. I'm like, just legitimately good people who, who do the right things for the right reasons. That being said, one of the ways through which a person can address the issue of prayer is, okay, it matters to me that we take a moment to pray. Would that bother you if I'm the one that's praying? You started off that way. First, you start praying on your own and getting your own guidance about how you should address the situation. And then you transition it without being necessarily heavy-handed. Because here's the thing: if you gotten to the point where the relationship works, where you're cohabitating or married, then obviously a lot of things should have gone right before then. All right. So, I'm not saying blow your relationship up
Right.
over this one issue. What I'm saying is I think it's beneficial in helping you maintain and develop the relationship. No different than, I'm not saying the person has to go to the gym. I'm saying that going to the gym would help you better develop and maintain health. It's no
Mm-hmm.
different. All right. So just like we have different various versions of health, your spiritual well-being makes a difference to your life because sometimes people just don't recognize that. Just sometimes, to use an old school church term, just having some covering on you before you go out of the house. Just have some, covering on your family members before they
Yeah.
go out of the house. You don't know when you pray that prayer for protection,
Mm-hmm.
how that might, have you avoid
Yeah.
or just miss a situation that could be problematic, or just
Mm-hmm.
because you're praying intuitively, you're told, don't do that, do something else. Yesterday in Chicagoland area, somebody was driving, uh, police were chasing somebody all through the city, all the way to a suburb, and the guy ran into a mall. Or the people, I don't know how many people. But here's the thing. Nothing ended up happening, thank goodness. But it might have been somebody that was headed to that
Mm-hmm.
mall who intuitively said, don't go there, do something else. And they could have potentially avoided a whole circumstance. You prayed up so you can make sure that your spiritual qualities, your faculties are up to speed. So your intuition is working, your faith is working,
Right.
your imagination is working, your wisdom is working, your understanding is working. You pray to develop these things. And if they work for you individually, how much better would it be as a couple to be able to grow spiritually together? I think it makes a difference. I think it makes a strong difference. Not to mention, we start talking about goals that you want
Mm-hmm.
to have, um, higher purposes that you might want to do with your life, and making sure that you have in this case, a spouse or significant other who really understands this is what you're about and this is why. It's easier to get connected to that when you're doing your own prayer work.
I 100% in agreement with you. I find that out here dating, people are now dating people from other cultures, which means it's going to impact their religious beliefs, right?
Hmm.
And I've seen this even now today where the wife goes to one church and the husband goes to another church.
Hmm.
I don't, what are your thoughts around that? Like they've divided themselves.
I don't see it as much as dividing themselves if they can make it work. It all depends on if you can make it work. The key to life is if you can make it work, because it might not be my thing, but can you
Mhm.
make it work? There are some people who uh, don't go to church at all, and the spouse goes to church. Normally, it's the female that goes and the male that doesn't.
Yeah.
Normally, I'm not saying that's always the case, but in religious settings, especially in a North American Christian church, is
Mhm.
primarily like 3 out of 4 women most of the time when you average it out. So, so obviously there's a discrepancy already. Now, when you
Okay.
start talking about going to different places, sometimes that's just based upon upbringing. I
Right.
think the beautiful thing about that is a person won't allow their religion to interfere with the person that can possibly be a person they can build a life with,
Mm.
if you can make it work. Now, I've seen some people who have made that work wonderfully.
Right.
And I've seen people really crash and burn with it. I mean, really crash and burn, really crash and burn. I'm serious.
Oh,
And
I agree. I've seen it.
so, and the crash and burn normally looks similar to, uh, you know, someone who has more of a stricter religious
Hmm.
belief. In other words, you have a religion that has a lot of strict rules around what it means to be in that religion, very strict practices, and the fact that if you do this, then obviously spouse, in this case, what I'm talking about,
Right.
has to do it. I think I mentioned in the podcast last year about a couple I knew that, you know, the man was Islamic and the woman
Mm-hmm.
was Pentecostal Christian, and they really clashed because he fell in love with the Pentecostal lady. He wasn't concerned about, you know, how a Muslim woman should present
Right.
themselves upon his position. And then when they got married, he wanted her to transition over to becoming a Muslim woman. And she's like, this is who you fell in love with.
Right.
And now it's not good enough.
Right.
But, you know, but that's an example of people not communicating clear what matters to them in the context of relationship. People just think foolishly
Mm-hmm.
that if they love me, they'll change because of me.
Right. No,
That's foolish.
it never works.
Okay. I'm not gonna say it never works. What I will say is it's
Really.
foolish. It,
Yeah.
it'll work temporarily sometimes
Mm-hmm.
because some people are so invested in somebody else and that their own self-worth that they will
Mm-hmm.
give up their own identity. So I'm not gonna say it never
Yeah.
works. But is it emotionally healthy to where you
But
feel as though that you no longer have a sense of who you are to be
exactly.
with someone else? And I've
I was
seen
going
it.
to say it's got to be a negative impact on that person who does make that change as to who they are, especially if you're a person who's been grounded in your faith since childhood, that now that you're married, you jump over into this other faith and it's like forget everything you've learned, understood, believed, and now I'm this. That in some way, I'm sure it has to impact that relationship.
Yeah, I know, you know, I remember people coming to me the guy was Christian, the lady was Buddhist. I don't remember what type of Buddhist, but Buddhist. And he couldn't get past it. He couldn't get past it. She checked every check mark except for she wasn't Christian because he grew up in the context of you had to be saved. And obviously from his perspective, a Buddhist person could not be saved because that person did not believe that Jesus was their savior. Therefore, he didn't want to, in his church context, anything that wasn't Protestant Christian, meaning, non-Catholics, Christianity is basically divided up into Catholicism, Orthodox, and Protestant. But anyway, when I want to get to that, Protestant just means all these denominations, the Baptist, the Pentecostal, all the denominations primarily that are not Catholic are you normally called Protestant. My point is this, not to get lost in that stuff. A wonderful woman that this guy was with made a decision to be with, made decisions about being with her, could not get over the last hurdle of, if she loves me and I love my Pentecostal Christianity and my perception and understanding of Jesus, how come she won't transition? She
Right.
wanted her practice. She wanted her mantras. She wanted her stuff. She didn't want to go to a church where they profess things she didn't believe.
Right.
And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, so it would be difficult, and I'm just going to be honest with you. It would be difficult for a couple like that to pray together. That would have to be more practicing on your own, or having enough selflessness to be able to say, okay, when we come together, can we do something more generic?
Okay.
As long as we're connecting and getting in alignment with our sense of the divine. For example, if a person was in Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, they have various beliefs about God.
Mm-hmm.
Some are atheist, agnostic, Catholic, various versions of Protestant, like Baptist, Pentecostal, Lutheran, etc. Or they can be Buddhist, Hindu, whatever. But they can all come together around the commonality that there is a higher power
Mm-hmm.
that they need to surrender to be able to deal with their addiction. So it's possible if you have, if you can get your ego out of the way.
I'm really glad you said that. I think the willingness to even be open to a new faith or a new religion, when you, at this point, we're dating the spectrum, that you have to go into it with that perspective that that person may not. I mean, and the thing is, dating someone who's Muslim, you know that there's expectations, right? So in your mind, you should know that this is going to come up, just like dating someone who's Catholic or who's Buddhist or, Presbyterian. Everyone has these beliefs and understandings. So I don't know, guys, when we get back, we're going to talk about why it's important to pray together as a couple. Even with all these different elements, there's still a level of importance. And to even ask Gaylon, is there something that, like he said, is there a simpler version, a watered down version of the prayer, something that we can do together that can help us bond spiritually? Folks, when we get back, we're going to talk through that, because when you're out here dating, those things are important. And a lot of times, those are not things you discuss before you get married. You're married to the person and you feel like, okay, I missed this loop. But we're going to close this loop today with Gaylon, because we're going to talk about why prayer is important for couples. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
What's up with it? Do it cause I love it and I stuck with it. We ain't with the subbing in the cut with it. Please none of the talks, I heard enough of it. Like, what you gonna do? Where you at? Who you with? You ain't really about this, don't talk about it. Really on the move, on the map, never slip. Keep your hands to your lips, don't talk about it. Real eyes, realize all the time. Stand on it, if we said it, we don't walk around it. Loose lips, sink ships, red cup, blue strips, new phone, who this? No, we don't allow it. Really on go, I don't know what's an off day. Now we on road, came from smoking in the hallway. Now we got shows, boys feeling like Broadway. Always look both ways, even on a crossway. Driving down Cross Bay, out town Barclays. Really on big things, came up a small way. Championship rings, baby, that's a ball game. Oh, she want a little bag, baby, that's small change. Yeah, that money talk. If we ain't cool, then cut me off. No breaking news, don't run your mouth. Thought it was the plug, now he running off. Thought it was a plug, now he running off. What you gonna do? Where you at? Who you with? You ain't really about this, don't talk about it. Really on the move, on the map, never slip. Keep your hands to your lips, don't talk about it.
Hey guys, welcome back. And you know it's Wednesday. It's the Meta Behind Relationships with Gaylon McDowell. Folks, today we're talking about prayer and couples. You know, with everyone dating different people, people marrying people of different ethnicities, this is an important conversation, because sometimes you later find out that you guys are in two different spaces when it comes to your faith and how you're going to raise your children, or how you're just going to live your life. So we're having this conversation. So Gaylon, you're going to have to tell us, why is praying together so important for couples?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think, obviously seeking to invoke a higher level of awareness, a spiritual awareness that taps you into the divine guidance, power, provision, and protection for your family. All of those things matter. But I think the thing that matters the most in the context of couples is getting out of your own selfish mentality. I can't emphasize that enough, because people had most people have as a default, just because it's just human nature and human behavior to seek to desire, experience, and express their own opinions, their own points of views, their own context. Now, when you start dealing with another individual, when you start cohabitating and building a life with another individual, now you have other concerns.
Yeah.
It's not just, okay, what do I think about it? Now it's what is best for the relationship. All right. And if I'm struggling with a particular aspect of the relationship, as I pray, just like what can happen individually, you can get some insight. You can have your own aha moments where the light bulb goes off metaphorically, and then it can help you realize, okay, I need to shift around this. I
Right.
need to open up with I need to lead with more love. Prayer helps with that process. I need to learn how to forgive better and quicker. Prayer helps with that process. I need to have more intention and focus when it comes to my relationship. Prayer helps with focus and intention. So these are some of the things that you want to work on. And obviously, I believe in the power of prayer to help transform experiences. So therefore, if you're praying about your common goals, you give yourself a better opportunity to manifest them.
I think that's fantastic. And guys, if you are in a situation where you are from different faiths, what's your approach for that, Galen, when it comes to prayer? And I don't want to say I said watered down or simplified, but it's got to be something that they can do together that's similar to prayer that will be able to give them that same unique experience.
Figure out where love meets between the two individuals, because we say God is love, right? So, you might have to use some substitute words like love this, love that, affirmations that can promote wholeness and togetherness and not emphasize the differences. Those could be ways in which that can happen. Again, your first thing you obviously need to do is make sure you have your own prayer life based upon your own practices, your own religious practice, because we live in a pluralistic society. We don't believe in one thing. So you can be a Pentecostal Christian, can have a very different mentality from a Baptist, from an Episcopalian, and from maybe like a New Thought Christian, like a Unity, or with me, Universal Foundation for Better Living, still under the umbrella of Christianity, but with a much different view when you're a metaphysical Christian, versus a Lutheran Christian, or you might be a Unitarian Universalist. That's a big difference from being an evangelical Christian. So even within the same lane of umbrella of the religion, you can have a lot of different expressions. So I would say to seek commonality, but first develop your own prayer awareness, your own prayer consciousness, your own prayer life. Because here's the thing: saying we should pray when you don't pray is hypocritical, in my opinion.
Galen, wait, can you go back when you said we should pray when you don't pray?
Right.
So the thing is, the first thing you're saying is you should be praying independent of the couple prayer.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And then allowing divine spirit, however you use that term in your religion, to help you guide your processes. But you can't get to that. I was listening to something as I was driving into the church this morning. I was listening to a guy that's a Taoist. Some people say Taoist, but in modern Mandarin is Taoist. And he was just talking about the Taoist way of living. And it was interesting because he said something that really made me pause. He was talking about how he was a part-time occasional meditator, and then when he turned 45, he got serious about meditation and qigong. I was listening to a martial art guy, you know how I am about martial arts, but what was interesting was he said, after you're meditating for a couple of years, then you'll start getting some of these visions and other things and archetypes revealing itself. And I just stopped for a moment and just paused and said, okay, the state of consciousness that this guy is talking about to reach the heights that helped him reveal his own life, his own purpose, his own whatever, was after a couple of years of meditation, daily meditation.
Right.
Okay. How many people are really going to stick to that? Then we wonder why we don't always get the results we desire. This guy is basically saying, I was seeking purpose, I was seeking understanding of my life and etc. So I meditated seriously for the first time. And after a couple of years, things became clear. Now a lot of times people don't want to do that type of work. I was just thinking about people who do different type of what I would call mind-body meditations. And I know this is not necessarily a couple thing, but it's coming up, so I might as well share it. So you have different various versions of it. In the Hindu metaphysics, it's the 7 chakras. In Unity, Charles Fillmore, Unity, the 12 powers of man, or 12 gifts from God, but he called it the 12 powers of man. Different faculties in the body symbolizing different spiritual qualities in traditional Chinese medicine, and which you also see in Korea and Japan, Okinawa, and many other places. They have their own system of meridian points and different things. Focus your energy on this part of the body, etc. In martial arts, and we were always, in Kung Fu, and I was, studying for years. Focus on the Dan 10. That's 2 inches below your navel and 2 inches in, and put your energy put your attention there. But you go to a Korean place, they'll just call it Danjon. You go to Japan, they'll call it something else. The point is, they have all of these things. And I was just pondering the point that going and meditating just on a particular center in your body, an energy center or a spiritual faculty, whatever term you want to use, it might take so many hours, so many days, so many weeks, so many months, just to be able to get a blip of energy movement in that particular faculty.
Right.
Okay. But that blip can change everything.
I like what you said. The investment is the time that you invest. And that's the thing, a relationship is an investment.
Yes.
So you got to look at it under the same terms of, if you wanted to be successful, folks, you have to do what it takes to ensure that it is successful. Folks, when we get back, we're going to talk about, when you do pray, what are you praying for? Those are the things that, we want to talk about. Somebody said, and I remember, I'm not sure if it's you or not, that people go in as if they can have a grocery list for God or something like a genie in a bottle type of prayer. And I'm saying, well, I don't think that's the right approach. So over the years, folks, I've learned how to pray. I do meditation every morning and every evening because of this guy right here. So I'm going to tell you, it does work, and it has changed my life completely. So I want you guys to pay attention. When we get back, we're going to talk about how to pray as a couple. There are things that come up and you need to understand how to approach them together. Folks, we'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
Give me some directions to get to you. Ain't gonna waste my time. I know that we got connection. I think about you. You're on my mind. Yeah, I'm going out of my mind. Yeah, for you, my love. You drive me crazy, tell me what to do. do. I'm on my knees, yeah, I am begging you, begging you. I'll break the rules if it will get me to you.
So guys, welcome back. You already know it's Wednesday and we've got Gaylon. So that means it's the meta behind relationships. Gaylon, we had just finished talking about why it's important for couples to pray together. Regardless of your religious beliefs, there's some happy medium that you can get to in order to have that bond. But now we're going to talk about what to pray for. Like Gaylon, I mean, me independently, I'm always praying for, the success of my businesses. I don't say specifically what they are. I do write them down in my affirmations, though, which is different than my prayer. And when I meditate on things that are very calming for me. So I'm not going to say I have the right approach. So I'm going to say, can you help me? Because I don't know if I'm doing that right.
Well, one, again, I always go back to the practitioner matters.
Mm-hmm.
Do what works. Evaluate your results. That
Okay.
matters. Now, putting that aside, I'm a big believer in praying for what you want, what you desire. I'm not one of the people who say that, oh, you shouldn't pray for things. I don't believe in that. I think prayer is such a large umbrella term that it can mean many things depending on where you are. Yes, it's a process of seeking to discover the higher will and purpose. Yes, it's a process of developing your faith and your other spiritual qualities. Yes, it's a way in which you get out of your own way. And it's a process of stillness, like you were talking about, just still in meditative contemplation, and what that meditative contemplation can take you to, which I use as a person who studies old school metaphysical Christianity. We call it the silence. Where you get past or beyond your own words and thoughts to the higher inspiration and divine life and grace that now you open yourself to expressing. But it can also be a very serious, intentional, selective process, like visualization, like affirmative prayer, where you're literally seeking to develop the consciousness to produce the experience you desire. So I'm all for writing it down. I'm also all for speaking it. Speak the word for what it is you desire. And as you speak the word for what you desire, what will end up happening many times is it helps you focus your thought, because in metaphysics, we tell people that consciousness produces form.
Yes.
Now, if consciousness produces form, and prayer is a method in which you transform your consciousness, then prayer is a great way in which you can demonstrate new good in your life. So what should couples be praying for? In my opinion, obviously, the success and well-being of the relationship, the health of the people in the relationship, or extended family if they have children. And, but that should be primary. The prosperity of the family, the goals of the family, whether individual or collective, they should come under the umbrella of the prayer. It might not be my thing, but if you're involved with it, then I'm praying for the success of it.
Right.
So to borrow a Reverend Ike term, I love me some Reverend Ike. You must be definite with the infinite. You must be definite with the infinite. So power moves when you get intentional. So I'm all for being intentional with prayer. All for it. And I'm also all for stepping away, getting yourself spiritually aligned, and stepping away from everything mentally, just so you can recalibrate. Again, it's an umbrella term. Prayer means different things to different people, and I think we have to just be mindful of that. For the Buddhists who's doing a mantra, is really just repeating the same words over and over again. It's a mental conditioning process. Might be different than being still and seeking to align your spiritual faculties, which might be different than visualizing your good, which might be different than the Baptist or the Pentecostal praying in front of the altar at the church, which might be different than the Catholic with the prayer beads, which
Right.
might be, or the candles, or which might
Right.
be different, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My point is prayer is a process through which you commune with God. And if prayer is a process through which you commune with God, then an aspect of God as divine laws helps is, in my opinion, set up for our benefit. And that benefit is that which you can hold in consciousness, you can experience in your life if you develop the consciousness for it.
Gail, I like that you said that. I kind of see it for me as, how can I say, aligning myself to what it is that I want in life, right? And putting my subconscious and my conscious on one path, creating the vibrational energy in order to pull those things to me. And also to have the mindset, like you said, the intuition, when what I'm focused on in that perspective, broad perspective, if it's not where I should be. And so one of the things I always say is that, lead my footstep, but not only lead my footsteps, but lead my sight. Because a lot of times I tend to be going in one direction and my little eyes be like, you should be over here. And I'd be like, okay, Christine, you are doing the feet, but God is doing the vision. Can you just and refocus yourself? So like you said, having that intuition. And I don't think people understand how important that is, just taking a moment to just kind of realign yourself, like you said, and making sure that your subconscious and your conscious are both on the same page. Now, what happens, Galen, when you have a person who is subconsciously and consciously aware in a relationship, but the other isn't?
Yeah, again, I think that person needs to evaluate how that person treats them and how they show up in the relationship. Again, I'm not telling people blow up your relationship because the person
Mhm.
doesn't want to pray. How do they treat you? You know, I mean, when it's all said and done, how do they show up in the relationship? And if they're showing up in the relationship as love and support, and then you blow it up because of this one thing, then I think that can cause some regret later in life. Because I've seen some people who said what Shaq said. I think, I don't know if you ever saw the interview with Shaq. It was last year or 2 years ago, when he was talking about being young and foolish. You know, women and all this other stuff. He said I had a wife, fine as a mug. That was actually his term. He's like, good woman, down for me, handled the business on her, on all the qualities, gave me beautiful children, and I messed that up. And he just was honest about it. Like
Mhm.
he said, he realizes now, as a man at his age, that he had a super high quality lady that he was too foolish to keep and maintain that relationship by doing the things that mattered. All
Mhm.
right. So I'm not telling a person that has a high quality individual to mess up everything because the person
Right.
won't hold hands with you and pray. If they're showing up in a way that loves and supports you, provides for you, protects you, um, puts the relationship first, then what are we really talking about other than, yet again, don't be a hypocrite, work on your own prayer stuff,
Mhm.
and and if they respect your spirituality, then you have the opportunity to model it, and they might want to,
Yeah.
at whatever level of their engagement, want to know more about it. Maybe not from a conversation standpoint, but from an experience standpoint. Okay, pray, whatever. Look, people watch success. I'm a big
Mhm.
believer in this. People watch success. So they start saying, okay, what do you do
What
that
do you
makes you
do?
peaceful? What do you do that's, you get involved with stuff and you're always winning. You're always
Mhm.
getting good results. Nobody's 100% in life,
Right.
but people pay attention to what
Mhm.
actually works. When people make their transitions in families and people go in the hospital, you're always calm. Why? So people start paying attention. So when they have questions about life, they
Mhm.
tend to call you. That's not an accident because people are paying attention, even when they don't want to live how you live.
Right.
even when they don't want to have the positions you have, you will be the default life works person.
I like what you said, life works person.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe that, when people know how to stay prayed up, even if it's not a prayer that I agree, necessarily agree with, like I'm not a hyper emotional person, but like, my grandmother, and grandfather, for instance, on my mother's side, grandmother was very sanctified, becoming a minister later in life. She didn't have any training and all that, whatever, but she would have prayer meetings in the house. She was very sanctified. For those who don't know, in black culture, we call really high level Pentecostal people sanctified, the speaking in tongues, the praying, the Holy Spirit, slain in the spirit type stuff. So she was one of those slain in the spirit people. Pray, people fall, and that was the thing. It was ladies every Friday at the house. She prayed, they hit the ground. I picking them up off the floor, putting them on the couch. That was their form of prayer. Okay. You're not going to see me pray and get up and start Holy Ghost dancing, but I don't diminish that experience for somebody, because I grew up with a sanctified grandmother who, even though my grandfather wasn't a religious man, he respected it enough to give her room and rhythm when it came to that,
right?
Because they got results,
right?
Okay, so I'm not going to be praying for somebody to hit the floor and be like, "Get out of them, devil," and all that stuff she tell people. But I will say that it worked for her.
Well, folks, and that's what it's about. It worked for her, and her husband allowed her and gave her that space. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we get back, we're going to talk about big decisions. Are you praying about them as couples? Or are you just charging off and doing them? Gaylon has a word for you. And Gaylon, I'm listening because I need to know how to manage myself in relationships. And I think a lot of times when you're an individual coming into a relationship, you're just accustomed to making the decisions, right? Big or small. But folks, that's something to talk about. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
You want it though? Where do I begin? I see the hate, they don't wanna see me win. Bank deposits, I got more coming in. Top down, throw the money in the wind. I don't want it all. Heard he scammer, had to switch up the accounts. Moving paper, gotta call in my account. It's all in, I can have it coming out. Been through the struggle, I can see another drought. Yeah, it's not a purse, it's a merch. 6 figures was a goal, now it's 9 or a hearse. Put it work. Used to pull up, not swerve. No time for the snakes, trying to put them in the dirt, that's word. I gotta get it, it's in my DNA. You only see the highlights, don't know what it takes. Last year stressing, got no sleep. Now I'm right between the courts, out of nosebleed. Yeah, I see the hate, they don't wanna see me win. Bank deposits, I got more coming in. Top down, throw the money in the wind. I don't want it all. Heard he scammer, had to switch up the accounts. Moving paper, gotta call in my account. It's all in, I can have it coming out. And through the struggle, I can see another drought. Yeah, same circles to the same gang. We just get to it, we don't gang bang. Lost some friends to the same thing.
Down, down, down. This shouldn't be us. What came between us? When did we become like them? We weren't supposed to break up, but it's too late to make up. Don't know if my heart will mend. No, this should not be us. Not be us. Not be us.
Hey guys, welcome back. You already know it's Gaylon, so it's the Meta Behind Relationships. Gaylon, couples, whether you're married, cohabitating, what do we say, shacking up? I was trying to give all the common law marriages, whatever it may be, or just figuring it out and moving in together. Folks, you got big decisions to make. Gaylon is going to talk about what you need to do in relation to making big decisions and prayer. So listen up and get that notebook, because some of you guys are in this situation right now.
Well, obviously, getting together and praying for divine wisdom and guidance around a thing should be the first first thing. And then really checking in with yourself. Okay, do I really want to experience this? Do I desire this? Is this for the, am I in the way, or am I pulling somebody that doesn't really want this experience? Because sometimes you can really want something, and then
Right.
you're dragging the person in a relationship to something that they really don't want, which can create resentment. So prayer helps create clarity around that. Getting together, it's like, okay, reveal to us the right and perfect action. Like, Holy Spirit, reveal to us the right and perfect action. Now, I just made that up, but I think it's a great prayer to pray, just in general. Holy Spirit, reveal to me the right and perfect action. But and then you sit still with it. You have to be with it. Now, I think there's also a thing called expertise, and that sometimes people in relationships just don't want to be honest about it. Some people are better at certain things in a relationship.
Yes.
Okay. And, if you are dealing with somebody who has experience in real estate, and you're trying to make all the decisions about the next house or to buy, property,
Right.
it would be foolish not to lean on a person with expertise. That doesn't mean that they're the final word.
Right.
But, if you have a better expertise or better understanding, or you have more access to the people who have the information, then I think then that should be a part of the conversation as well.
Exactly.
That way. Sometimes people just don't want to admit that. Now, even with that, yet again, when you're leading in a particular circumstance, because being co-equals does not mean that you always have equal opinions, expertise, and skill with every subject. But if you're leading too far ahead, then you're creating a problem.
Wow.
Because you're supposed to be taking the person with you.
Right.
You're not supposed to be in front of them.
Dragging them along.
Right. That's the challenge. Okay.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. Let me use a word that not necessarily always used with couples, but you have to enroll the person into what you're seeing.
I like that word.
Okay. Like, you have a vision of this is possible. Now, my job is to help you see what I'm seeing. Now, you're not going to see it soup to nuts the way I see it.
Right.
Okay. But if you have a higher vision, in Christian circles, we call it evangelism. Okay. To use a biblical analogy, Jesus walking up to fishermen and saying, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." That'll make you stop. Like, okay, I've been out here as a fisherman on this net on the side of this boat.
Right.
What do you mean? Okay.
Right.
But what he was actually doing was enrolling them in a higher vision and purpose.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, you're dealing with your significant other. Help them see it. See, this is where communication comes into play, because prayer should also be okay, God, okay, Spirit, okay, whatever the term you use. Help me best understand how I can explain this to another person. Help me be able to share this vision. So they can see your passion. They can see why we need to do this.
Right.
Okay. Because different people are in different stages of their own understanding. But if you're committed to enrolling a person to what you're seeing, then they will take the actions on their own. See, this is one of the beautiful things about a statement that I heard many years ago, 30 years ago now. It was from the lady who ordained and trained me, the Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman. She said, or used to say, "No organization can rise higher than the consciousness of the leader."
Wow.
Now,
that's powerful.
Powerful. Now, if you put that in a family context, it works. You put it in your business context, it works. You put it in the church context, you put it in a nonprofit context, you put it in the government context, it all works. No organization can rise higher than the consciousness of the leader. Now, John Maxwell, who is many people consider the leadership expert, he calls it in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, the law of the lid, that the organization the leader is the natural lid of an organization.
The law of the
Your
lid.
family, you're you're the couple, you're the lid. And if some part, don't be the reason why your relationship and your marriage and your lives can't expand, because you're limiting the ability for it to grow. Prayer helps you expand your lid. But here's the thing. So, some people have, I believe, sometimes just better either developed or natural leadership skills. And when people understand that, they'll defer if the results show up the way they need them to show up. Okay. But here's the thing: if you're a level 6 leader out of 10, this is hypothetical. That means you can only lead 5 and below. Right. All right. So part of understanding how to use prayer and to work and develop on your own skills is, I can't be a 4 and I'm married to a 7 and I'm trying to lead that 7. They're going to naturally push back.
Right. What you just said is major.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what happens. So sometimes people get with married people who are at a higher level in skill and leadership. Let's just say leadership. Let's leave it at that for now. And now you're like, I'm the man or the woman, I make more, or I'm more highly educated, or whatever. But at the leadership level, you're not equal.
Right.
So now you're trying to lead somebody who will naturally say, no, that's not how we do things. We can do this, and move things, because a leader is not a manager.
Right.
A leader casts vision.
Exactly.
A manager maintains systems.
Exactly.
Both are necessary. But when you mix one with the other, you can create problems, especially in a relationship. Some people are better at managing stuff in the relationship. They maintain the household, they make sure bills and whatever, etc. And then the other person might be the big picture vision caster.
Right. Folks, what he just said, if you missed the entire podcast and you just tuned in, what he just said is major in a relationship, and I see it as being major. I think a lot of women often, in my role, forget that. And so you walk into a relationship because you're so accustomed to being the leader that you coming in as the dominant, right? But I think you need to understand, like you just said, who's better at it. I'm quick to be behind the scenes. I can make a lot of magic happen from behind the scenes. I don't have to be the lead. I think and a lot of times you're forced to be the lead, and that's great. But if you can look at prospectively who's better at the job, the titles, the degrees, none of that stuff matters. Folks, this is a relationship. Just understand everybody has a voice in this relationship. And if you don't understand anything else, tune in on Wednesdays. Watch Gaylon's podcast. I kid you not. If you start from the beginning and work your way forward, your relationship would be amazing. Gaylon, as always, this has been an amazing show. Thank you so much for being part of the 5F's to Love family. And I'm telling you right now, I'm going to rewatch this myself in order to prepare myself for the next phase of my life. Guys, we'll see you next Wednesday. And don't forget, the meta behind relationships with Gaylon. Of course, he's going to close it out because he's got homework. So I'll see you guys next week. Thanks, Gaylon.
Thank you. You're welcome. So just quickly, I just have some quick homework for you to check out. One of them is something I did on developing your mind for success. You always got to be mindful of what it is that you're seeking to do. Go on YouTube, take a look at, what I have on prayer. I did something on ask and receive, which is a great lesson also on how to pray for what it is you want in life, what you desire, how to ask for it. Have some other stuff on there talking about the simple processes of prayer. I can't remember the name of it offhand right now. But if you type my name in YouTube and put prayer, stuff will pop up. Work with prayer. Work with it. Develop your own process, your own system of prayer and meditation, visualization, listening, and just getting into the habit of surrendering by saying, not my will, your will be done, as an individual, as a couple, as a family, and you'll develop intimacy, not just at a physical level, not just at an emotional level, but also on a spiritual level. So hopefully that helps. God bless. I'll see you next week.